I was the short, fat kid my whole life, yo-yo dieting from the time I was young enough to know even what a diet was. The heaviest I ever got was 235 pounds, and I never once touched Ozempic, semaglutide, or any other GLP-1 medication. I want to talk about why that matters and why a certain type of voice in this space doesn't want you to think it does. I've created a platform called Life After GLP-1s, and because of that, people in the metabolic health space, doctors, researchers, other coaches, and my friends send me a lot of content. They know I'm paying attention to this conversation. Recently, my friend Mark sent me something that I felt needed to be addressed. I'm not going to name names because that's not what this is, but I am going to lay out the argument because I think it's doing real damage to real people who are already in a vulnerable place. The message was essentially this: obesity is a disease, GLP-1 medication is the treatment, and anyone suggesting otherwise is spreading misinformation. Now, I'm going to be completely upfront. What I'm about to say is my opinion. I don't believe obesity is a disease. And before anyone comes at me in the comments, I'm not dismissing genetics. Some people are absolutely predisposed to whole body fat. That's real, that's documented, and that deserves its own conversation, maybe its own video. But there is a significant difference between acknowledging genetic predisposition and telling someone they have a chronic disease requiring a lifetime prescription. One gives people context, the other takes away hope. I really want you to think about this. When the entire argument is built on, trust me, I'm a doctor, that's not science or evidence, that's an appeal to authority. It's actually a logical fallacy. It means the credential is being used to replace an argument instead of support it. And the reason that matters, especially here, is that authority without transparency isn't credibility. It's leverage. It's using a white coat to close down a conversation that should always stay open. Because credentials tell you someone went to school, they don't tell you what's shaping their conclusions. They don't tell you what ecosystem their message serves. And they absolutely do not tell you whether the person sitting at home, confused, gaining weight, losing hope, is being empowered or just being managed. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm someone who is overweight, arguably obese, my whole life. And I figured it out in my 40s with nutrition. And maybe that's exactly why I can say what I'm saying, because I don't have a brand built on being the authority. I have a result, and results are a different kind of credential. And this is where it gets interesting. There's a particular type of content creator in this space right now, podcasts, Substacks, social media channels, built entirely around a very specific brand identity. I'm the one calling out the hucksters. I'm the mythbuster. I'm the no BS voice. And that's a compelling brand. It works. People trust it because it sounds like the opposite of misinformation. But here's the question worth asking. When your entire platform is built around being the person who exposes everyone else's agenda, what's yours? Courses, paid content, coaching programs, monetized audiences. That's still a business model. And a business model can shape a message just as much as any supplement company or wellness influencer or health coach you're busy calling a huckster. I'm not saying that makes someone wrong. I'm saying it makes them the same as everyone else. Someone with a perspective and an incentive. And if you're going to hold everyone else to that standard, you better be transparent about your own. Because using words like huckster, charlatan, and quackery and no BS to describe everyone who disagrees with you, well, that's not science. That's rhetoric dressed up as evidence in its own kind of misinformation. And here's what sits underneath all of it. This particular voice promotes what they call culinary medicine. Food as medicine through a Mediterranean diet lens, whatever that means. How many Mediterranean diets are there? Evidence-based nutrition education, which is fascinating because in the same breath, they're calling out all the other creators, all the other coaches for selling food as medicine. They're selling food as medicine, just with better credentials behind it and a title. I'm not saying that approach is wrong. I'm saying the line between evidence-based and the wellness world they're criticizing is a lot thinner than the rhetoric suggests. And that tension is worth naming. I went from 235 pounds down to 169 in my 40s. learning about nutrition, learning what works. I wasn't exercising like a demon. I was walking, yoga, no prescription, no surgery, and my weight's been stable for years. Now, I'm not saying my path is everyone's path. I'm not saying medication is wrong for everyone who uses it, but I am saying that if my result is possible, and it is, I'm sitting here, then speaking in absolutes about what obesity is and what the only solution looks like isn't medicine, it's narrative. And here's what bothers me most about the narrative. It's aimed at people who are already struggling. People who have stopped the medication and are watching the weight come back and can't explain it to anyone around them. People who are losing faith in their own bodies. Telling those people they have a chronic disease and the drug is the only answer. How empowering is that? That's dependency. Dependency dressed as diagnosis. And when that message comes wrapped up in sharp language about who can say what, hucksters, charlatans, and quackery, what it actually does is shame anyone who dares to look for an alternative. It narrows the conversation down to one acceptable conclusion, and one acceptable conclusion handed down from authority. Once again, not science. Dogma. Your biology is not a life sentence. Metabolic function can be restored. The body can learn to regulate itself again. That's not a sales pitch. That's what the evidence, my life, and all the people I talk to, and the biology actually shows. And that's the entire reason this platform exists. And this is what I keep coming back to, hope. When you tell someone they have a chronic disease, when you use the full weight of medical authority to tell them that their body is fundamentally broken and the only viable answer is a lifetime prescription, what are you actually leaving them with? I know what that feels like. I was that person. The short, fat kid who tried everything, failed everything, and started to believe that this was just who I was. This was just my body. This was just getting older. It's poor me, bad luck. And that was how the story was going to end. I was diagnosed pre-diabetic. Nobody told me to accept it. I just eventually got curious enough about my own state, my own health, to start asking different questions. And those questions changed everything. That's not a miracle. That's not a sales pitch. That's what happens when someone is given permission to believe that change is possible. And that permission, that's what's missing from the conversation that tells you obesity is a disease and that the drug is the answer. It's not just incomplete logic, biology, science. It's the removal of hope from people who are already on their knees. And I don't care how many credentials are behind that message. When you take hope away from a vulnerable person and replace it with a diagnosis, that's not helping them. It's managing them. There's a difference, and that difference matters more than any evidence, clinical trial, scientific proof. I'm not anti-medication. I work with people navigating life after GLP-1s every single day, and I understand this deeply. But I am completely against speaking in absolutes to vulnerable people who are already losing faith in themselves. I also want to be clear about something. I'm not saying this person who I'm speaking about doesn't have real credentials or real titles, or they do. I'm not saying everything they put out is wrong. Some of it isn't. Some of it's their opinion. Some of it I agree or disagree with. Doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that credentials plus a business model plus absolute language aimed at vulnerable people, that combination deserves scrutiny. The same scrutiny they're applying to everyone else. Because the people watching that content, the ones who just stopped their medication and are desperately looking for answers, they deserve a fuller picture than you have a disease and this is the only treatment. They deserve to know that the biology, their situation, their lives can change and it's addressable, that the hormonal environment can be shifted, that their body is not broken beyond repair, that there is another conversation happening, and it's this one. If you're in this space and you genuinely disagree with my position, I'm right here. Let's have a conversation, publicly, professionally. That's how this moves forward. But if your message removes hope from people who are desperately looking for it, that's worth calling out. If you want the biology, if you want this explained without the agenda, subscribe. This is what I do every day.